All right, finally we're gonna move on to All Star. Do you want to go through East or West starters first?
Dealer's choice. You got one that you're more interested in approaching with
Well,
energy?
I have my West picks set already. The East, there's still
All
a
right.
couple that I'm deliberating on, and I guess we're just gonna do this live. So,
Well, I'm deliberating more on the West, but let's definitely start there. I
okay,
wonder. I I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna guess we're gonna have at least. I'm gonna guess we have the same four of the five starters. I think there's a chance we differ on the fifth one. Who are your Western Conference backcourt starters?
I think this was the easiest group out of all of them to decide. For me, it's Luca and Shea.
Yeah, I don't really think there's anything to discuss there. They're both like MVP, having MVP level seasons. Like these two guys are monsters. Like they're the two players um in the discussion for who is the best guard in the world right now. And I think
Mhm.
after that, everyone is trying to catch them.
They're the two players who are
Um,
having just like the most ridiculous offensive seasons right now. So,
Yeah. And just unstoppable for defenses. Like Shea's ability to like Shea does it, more with like shiftiness and change of pace and really resilient shot making and the ability to get a first step with everyone. Where Luca
yeah.
does it more with his like powerful strength and then his playmaking on top of that. But they're
Yeah.
just such incredible
I
guards.
mean,
And Shea's
Luca
having
has a nice change of pace game too, though.
I mean, they're both like the best like D accelerators
Yeah,
in the NBA. It's more they do it a little bit differently. Like Shea gets by you, then when you're recovering, he counters.
yeah.
Where Luca puts his shoulder into you, and when he gets you off rhythm,
Then he,
that's when he
yeah,
changes the pace. It's like the same thing done with a different style.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, that was easy. I'm assuming you have the same.
I have the same. So let's get into the front court players. I think it's
Yep,
possible that we have the same. I think there's one that's really easy. I
yep.
assume that Nikola Jokic has made your Western Conference All Star team.
Yes, he has.
Recent 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 Nikola Jokic games has him shooting like 83% from the field and 60% on threes and 90% from the line. Just like when I made this argument in like MVP discourse last year, it's like we're really overthinking this, everyone. Nikola Jokic does not miss shots very often. And like I'm all into the nuance of basketball, but at the end of the day, when you just shoot a lot and almost never miss, it's very hard to be more productive than that. And that is what Nikola Jokic does without even talking about his transcendent all-time great playmaking chops. So Nikola Jokic is also the easiest person to slot in to almost any position in this discourse. Who are your other two starters? Unless you have any Nikola Jokic thoughts. Like it's pretty boring how good he is.
Yeah, I mean, kind of another MVP quality year. Well, I mean, a couple of people are in front of him probably at this point, but yeah, I mean, the Nuggets are still really, really good when he's on the floor. I didn't I didn't have anything. I don't have anything to say that you haven't heard already when it comes to Jokic. My second guy, I had to go with Kevin Durant. I think
I also have Kevin Durant.
despite the Suns' disappointing overall season, he's been really good for the most
Yeah.
part. Yeah, I just think his numbers are again ridiculous. He's super important defensively for the Suns, which is concerning for them. But yeah, I mean
Yeah.
they just need KD to be on the floor at all times to even be like competitive, despite having two other former All Star players on the roster. So
Ooh, former. It's a spoiler alert for Devin Booker, I'm assuming. You don't have Bradley Beal on your All Star team? All right, all right.
Bradley Beal, no, this year, no. No, I'm saying they have been All Stars formerly. Yeah.
Bradley Beal did not make my long list. He's not someone who generally when someone has like a big name, I'll always like,
Bradley
sort of
Beal
consider.
hasn't played enough to be eligible
No,
for anything. He hasn't.
yeah, yeah. We're insulting our own podcast by continuing to talk about him. Who's your other pick? Because I have Kevin Durant kind of locked in
Yeah, those
as
were
well.
my two locks. My third one, I deliberated it on quite a bit. I really wanted to reward one of the Clippers guys just because I think Kawhi and Paul George are both having good seasons. Um, but I mean, their numbers don't necessarily pop off the page. Neither of them are great playmakers. Like I don't know. I ended up I ended up making the safe choice and kind of, or obvious choice or whatever, and I ended up just going with LeBron here because I think he will be a starter because of the fan vote for sure. Um, and it's like it's between him and AD and the two Clippers guys, and maybe Larry Markkinen if you want to make that choice. But I just think LeBron is still like the most impactful Lakers player, and even though the Lakers aren't having a necessarily great season, he's having a pretty good individual season. Um, and I just kind of like caved in, being like, this is the guy who's going to be the starter no matter what I decide. So there we go.
We can't stop you, LeBron, and Simon's not going to try, but I am putting my feeble resistance against the force of the chosen one down right now. LeBron is not in my starters.
Is this just like a his defense is too bad sort of argument?
No, I think like I think it's actually I think it's a really difficult choice between Kawhi, LeBron, Durant, and Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
I think Anthony Davis is getting he's a little bit at a disadvantage because I think people like putting two forwards on rather than two bigs. I really disagree that LeBron has been their most impactful player. Like I do think that by the numbers, that's a like easily defendable point to make. But
Yeah.
I don't think the Lakers offense sucks regardless
It
of
does,
what
but it
LeBron
sucks
does.
a
Like
lot when LeBron is on the bench.
yeah. This team is only hanging on by a thread because of their defense. Their defense is entirely built around Anthony Davis. LeBron, I
That is
don't
true.
think sucks on defense. I think LeBron is a very talented defender who does a lot of really high level things on defense, and he has some possessions where it's just like, oh my god, you're a genius.
Mm.
And you're just so hard to score on. But there's a lot of things that LeBron doesn't do on defense that do hurt the team. Like he just doesn't cover ground. Like
Yeah.
LeBron can't really close out very often. He can't make long rotations. He does strategically take plays off or whatever, how much you kind of buy into that narrative. I don't really care. I know that like LeBron offers occasional really high level defensive impact. And other times there's just things he can't afford to do with any regularity. And I
Hmm.
think that does make the Lakers sometimes very vulnerable on defense, where AD is just like, belongs somewhere in the defensive player of the year conversation. And then is no slouch offensively. Like I
Yeah.
just watched him last night, stayed up until 2 a.m. to watch AD just like absolutely dominate the Raptors, who are the Jakob Pertl. His post game has been the best it's been maybe in his career so far this season. AD's presence is quieter because he's an off ball player who gets it done on defense and attacks the margins, but he's also the Lakers' only real source of rim pressure.
Hmm.
LeBron doesn't really collapse a defense anymore. He attacks gaps. If you leave a gap open in your defense, LeBron will find it and hit it, and he will score on a double clutch lefty layup that he never ever misses.
Yeah.
And he will get dunks in transition, but he can't really bend the defense. The only thing that's generating any rim gravity for the Lakers is Anthony Davis just running hard at the rim. It's not great, but it's really all they got at this point. So
Yeah.
I think like in terms of invaluableness, I side with AD. I thought long and hard about making AD the other starter. I went with Kawhi
Okay.
mostly.
You baited
Um,
us right there.
yeah, I went with Kawhi Leonard because the Clippers are good, and the Clippers are really good.
Yep.
They've just been like really just punking teams for a while, and while Kawhi is not extremely loud in his presence, like what everything I just said about Nikola Jokic, like Kawhi just doesn't. He just goes out there and doesn't miss shots. It's just he's the like one of the easiest, most effective, resilient buckets in the NBA. He is their best or second best defensive player on any given night, even though he doesn't do it like he used to. He doesn't have the same limitations as LeBron, even though he kind of tries. Like I feel like
Yeah.
he'd like to be a LeBron level player, but they need more out of him this year in this regard. Defensive numbers like catch-all stuff actually like LeBron the most out of this group, but
Hmm.
I can't really reconcile that.
Yeah.
Um,
I saw that.
Ka- Kawhi, all of these guys again like LeBron, Kawhi, AD, um, and Durant all look about the same in terms of like stats to try to
Durant
impact
was a
measurement.
little bit ahead of the other three for me. Like I would have Durant as a clear first choice, and then that last front court spot, I was really deliberating between those guys, and I don't have super strong feelings about this. Like AD or Kawhi are also deserving candidates for that last starting spot. I think I'm a little bit swayed by just like the fan votes and just I don't know. It's fun to see a 39-year-old player playing at this level.
I think with Durant,
38. Sorry.
His numbers are a little bit boosted by the fact that he's playing ridiculous minutes.
But he's asked to do so much, and he's delivering.
Yeah,
so
I'm not saying that he like. I think he deserves credits for playing those minutes, but like his numbers look a little bit like he's actually a little bit behind some of these guys when you put them all like whatever you want to do per 36 or rate stats. He's not like he's averaging.
He's also on a worse team.
Yeah, I
with
mean
super inconsistent lineups that
Yeah, I mean Booker's played 28 games. Beal's obviously been basically a no-show. They built this team the way they wanted, and it was supposed to be the most talented team in the NBA, and they are learning pretty fast that they are wrong. But it's like what like the talent level between the Lakers and the Suns, I think is very debatable. I think they're just built like one's built to defend, the other one is built to offend, and I'm offended by how.
Well, I mean, if Beal was completely healthy and playing every night, Phoenix would be more talented, right? But I mean, part of it is like you're trusting in a guy who's been notoriously he misses a third of the season every single year and is constantly hurt, and takes a while to like really recover and rev back up to speed when he does come back. And then you're supplementing this roster built around this big three, of which at least one is very unreliable, with a bunch of veteran minimum cast-offs that most other teams didn't want. So,
yeah, I agree. I mean, Durant's my starter too. I just think I don't actually see a separation between these four. I think like if I read anyone's All-Star picks and they had 2 or 3, of any of these 4, I'd be like, yeah, that's super reasonable. LeBron's been incredible this year.
Well, they wouldn't have like 3. You got to have Jokic in that starting lineup.
No. Yeah, sorry. You're right. In the starters, 2 of the 3 in the starters.
Yeah.
But all of them are on my team.
Yeah.
They're all, and none of them are wild cards. They're all firmly at the reserve level or starter level.
Okay, so I think just to shake things up, we should do the East starters. Get all the starters out of the way first.
Okay, yeah, all right.
And then we'll talk reserves.
Okay.
Keep
the stars loaded at the front.
I will ask you to start us off here. East starters. Who do you got in your backcourt?
So this one is way harder than the West one. Yeah. I switched it up this morning at the last second. I think actually so I've got Halliburton, who just got injured.
Who might
be up.
Yeah. Maybe an injury replacement.
Yeah.
You can give your third best guard in case Halliburton isn't back for the All-Star game.
Well, because the next I had 3 guys like Halliburton was sort of my lock, and then I considered 3 guys for one spot. I ended up going with Donovan Mitchell. I don't think he's like the sexiest pick, but I think people, we just talked about Memphis and their injury difficulties. The Cavs, have it just as bad. They just kind of have more the Cavs have kept above water because Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen have played beautiful, amazing basketball. They've been without Evan Mobley and Darius Garland, and even when they had those players, every single night it was like someone was out. It's just been a really awkward, difficult season for them. But those players will come back, and the Cavs will fit. Anyways, concentrating more on Mitchell. I know that he's with the Cavs difficulties, he's fallen out of favor, but he's just having another monster season at the guard spot. He's still just one of the best offensive guards in the NBA. There's no real way to slice it, whether you like his games or not. He's that productive, and he's never been bad defensively on the Cavs.
Yeah, he's like the only guard in the East who isn't a nightmare on defense.
Yeah.
He's in a unique situation here.
Yeah,
at least out of all-star caliber players.
I don't think he's an amazing defender, but when you look at
but he's fine, and everyone else is really bad. So
everyone else is so. Who's the second best guard
defensive
defender out of players you considered for a starting spot.
Oh, I mean, there's no good defenders. Tyrese sucks on defense.
Yeah.
Brunson's horrible. Maxi's horrible. Trae Young
I
is
think
literally the
Brunson is
worst.
probably Brunson's my next pick,
He's still
which
not
is
good
like
on defense.
he's bad. He's bad. I'm agreeing with you that like it's like illustrated with the point that Brunson is the second best defensive guard amongst like all-star, unless you want to go deeper into the bag. But I don't think anyone considered Derek White as an all-star starter.
Oh yeah, not as a starter. Holiday and White are like the two good defensive guards in the East. Play on the same team,
Yeah.
but neither of them has the numbers because they're their team's third, fourth, or fifth options. Depending on the night. So,
and there really isn't like going down the list like the next best defensive guard. I can think it was maybe like Cade Cunningham.
I just realized, hey, we're in a unique situation here. This is the first time we've known each other where I don't think you can really pick Drew Holiday on your All-Star team.
Yeah, it's true.
You did so the last couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, then Derek White is just firmly having a better season than him on both sides of the basketball. So even like that, even the case for if you wanted to add like more Celtics to the team, I think Derek White is ahead in line. So yeah, I mean, Drew still had a really good year, but he's adopted a bit of a grittier, more physical role with the Celtics. Kind of like he's their new Marcus Smart, so he's in there like rebounding and like guarding up positions and doing the dirty work. Drew's still awesome, but. Let's he's not very high up on my all-star list. All right, who are yours? So I went Halliburton and Mitchell are my starters.
Yeah, I'm boring. I had the same two. Injury replacements if Tyrese is out for the All-Star game. Probably that's around the time he'll come back, so I don't think he'll play. I would have Brunson.
Okay, we can get into our reserves in a second. Let's go over to the front court. But there's not really anything to say about this front court, is there? Unless
you have a shocker. I had. You want me to go first?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I had Embiid, obviously.
Oh my gosh, Simon, why?
I think he's like current MVP favorite. So seems like a safe choice. I had Giannis having a monster season, and
my god,
I had
Simon,
Jason Tatum, the best player on the best team.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's really any room for like, I think if you were like a big Tatum, even if you were a big Tatum hater, which I know that you're not, you had him pretty high up on your MVP ballot last year. I don't see who that next player is that comes for Jason Tatum's, his head. I think like fans of their teams would maybe like if they
there's some Jaylen Brown truthers out there, man.
Oh, Jaylen Brown. He was like not really okay. Yeah, fair enough. If you want to give all the credit to Jaylen Brown, despite all the evidence to the contrary,
I'm just saying if you go on the Celtics board on Real GM, you can find a few.
Yeah, they do not give up, and we'll talk about Jaylen Brown. But just a quick shout out to like you already Embiid's a MVP candidate, but what a season he's having. Oh my gosh, like I hated the MVP discourse last year. I did not vote for him or think he should have won, but now I'm like, but I might vote for him this year. I mean, he's
better.
So,
I mean, it's crazy. You don't usually have a guy win an MVP, especially like in Embiid's case, like so much emotion poured into it. Like he wanted it so badly, it felt like he laid it all out there to use all these cliches, and then he comes back and he's improved. That's definitely not something I was expecting.
Well, I thought like between the burnout from the discussion and Embiid's unfortunate like playoff performance, I thought like he was basically disqualified from the league this year. But what do? You come back and you basically get better at everything you were already really good at. You play more consistent defense and you add a whole new dimension to your game. Like Embiid on the move is just so unfair compared like static Embiid getting like post ups and elbow isos was already unfair, and now just like now Nick Nurse has him like oscillating between dribble handoffs and just like apparating on weird spots of the floor and just like always playing with advantage, and it's just so silly. Statistically, like he's probably the best player in the NBA right now. I mean, I still know that Nikola Jokic is better than him at basketball, and I think people are sleeping a little bit on Nikola Jokic again, but I've got Embiid, Jokic, SGA, and Luka as like a clear
I feel like
MVP
it's gonna
tier.
be between him and Shea probably when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
Embiid's just scoring a lot more than Jokic, so I don't know if Jokic will be a real contender.
He always has, but that's like He did last year as well, and Jokic has recently turned it on. There was a minute where it was like, oh, Jokic is not really shooting the ball as well as he has in the past, and then he just got on this ridiculous tear lately. Anyways, not the time to debate MVPs, but like, if anyone thinks Jokic has slowed down, it's like a couple more games of shooting like this, and he'll be right back to where his shooting numbers were last year. And his shooting numbers last year were 63% from the field and 38% from three.
70% true shooting, right? It's insane.
Yeah,
it's unprecedented. I'll put it that way. These are the kind of numbers that like big men that take like 3 shots a game hit. Not high usage players.
Okay, so that's the East front court. Out of there, starters, we have the same starters in the East, so not much to discuss.
So there. 9 out of the 10 players we've been identical on. So
only I had Kawhi, you had LeBron. So let's go back to the West.
West reserves. So it's 2 guards, 3 forwards, and 2 wild cards, which can be whatever. In my case, there were 2 guards. Because I just thought the West doesn't have the best forwards. So anyway, I'll start us off. For my guards, we probably diverge here a little bit based on what you were hinting at, but I had Booker and Steph off the bench.
Booker.
Yeah.
Booker. I have Steph.
Yeah, I figured you would.
And I have Anthony Edwards.
Okay.
And Booker did not make my team. I had 2 guards ahead of Devin Booker.
Okay. I'm guessing we can get it. De'Aaron Fox is probably the other one.
Yeah, I think that's the and then my next one's a little bit more of like a hot take, but I'm also a little bit looking at games played, a little bit looking at like I'm a little bit of a Devin Booker skeptic. I think the numbers have been amazing. I think his shooting has drastically cooled off in a way. Like he started it off like continuing his sort of playoff performance level shooting, which is just like, is he just going to keep shooting like this? And just like what we were just saying about Nikola Jokic just shooting, like that's going to be Devin Booker. But that has come back to the norm. His playmaking has looked really good.
And that's really what sold it for me. I mean, he's like the one guy that he's played on a team that has no point guards. He's the one guy who can pass the ball. You have all these specialists who like cannot do anything with the ball in their hands. And KD is relied upon to create a lot of his own shots, and Booker does that too. But like he's I mean, I just think he's kind of forced into this role where he's having to create an offense out of like really unideal parts, and an offense that just like really does not look good half the time.
So Devin Booker, 28 games. He's missed 9 or 10 games.
Yeah.
For the Suns.
He's also having a good shooting season.
Yes, but like his shooting season is based on being like red hot for about 5 games and then being kind of just okay for the rest of it. He plays for a team that is bad. His own defensive struggles are a part of the problem for the 17th ranked defense. Phoenix fans will tell you how much he's improved. The Phoenix games I've watched, I disagree. I don't see him contributing big on defense at all. I think the playmaking has been impressive. I think he's a deserving all-star guard. But I had Anthony Edwards. I don't think Anthony Edwards is as good an offensive player overall as Devin Booker. He doesn't have the polish, but I think he brings a lot more in terms of his rim pressure. And then the defensive side of the ball, we're looking at an ocean between these 2 players. And I'm a little bit more in the mood to just like, if I'm kind of parsing through things, it's more than a tiebreaker for me that one plays for the best team in the NBA or the best team in the West, and the other plays for a team that is like threatening to fall out of the play-in because because the Utah Jazz are just too good. They're coming for Phoenix's play-in spot. I just don't really feel like giving the Suns 2 all-stars unless I have to. And I think there's enough things I can say against Devin Booker's case in terms of games missed, in terms of not being a big contributor on defense, even if you think he's solid, where I'm just like, I'm comfortable leaving Devin Booker behind some of these other players that I like more. I think Ant has been one of the better defensive guards in the NBA. Not like overall, like I wouldn't put him on an all defensive team, but
Yeah.
in the next group amongst star players, like we just talked about the East and their guards. I'd have Ant starting in the East by the way, like over Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think the point that you're making about the defensive end and the impact on winning is an appealing one. So I mean, I had Ant as a reserve, but or as a
You
wild
mean
card.
as a wild
Yeah,
card, yeah.
but I'm okay switching those two.
Um, yeah, and then so the other, well, I guess maybe we get more into this as well. We both agree on Curry, obviously.
Yeah.
Like there's no other.
He's the redeeming.
Warrior
He's the one
receiving.
redeeming factor about the Warriors this season. So
Yeah,
he's still really good.
His play has like dropped off a little bit. You see him less in like this like upper echelon tier where he's clearly an MVP level player, but he's still pretty ridiculous.
Well, that's why he's falling behind Shea.
Yeah, I think I think you could really make a case against Curry. Like we both had him here, but now that I'm kind of like browsing some of the stats, I'm like, you could make an argument to leave Curry off, whether that was because you wanted to put Booker or Ant.
I'm not leaving Curry off the team, but I mean, I could see the argument to have him as a wild card instead of De'Aaron Fox is my other wild card. I just don't think the forwards in the West were very good, So I had to. I filled my last two remaining spots with guards because I just think we have 6 good guards in the Western Conference.
Yeah, we get with Curry, like he started off the year crazy hot too, and looked like is he going to have his best season ever this year? But now looking at it, like he's cooled off big time. He's shooting, he's down to shooting, true shooting of 62%, which is like not very good for him. He's averaging 27 points per game, down from starting the year averaging 32. He's averaging his least assists ever, like 4.6 assists per game.
Yeah.
He's never dipped below 5. Back in 2013 he averaged 5.3, and then so that's noticeable. And the turnovers are as high as they've ever been, so it's not like he's just taking on less playmaking. I think like Curry's not actually like he's not quite platinum status protected. I've got him on my team for now, but I'm kind of like I could make an argument for.
Okay, you know what? We're gonna swap it. I'm putting Fox and Ant on the bench, and then Booker and Steph will be relegated to the wild card.
I am also moving Fox into the reserve tier and moving Curry down to wild card tier. There's some other guards I want to talk about, but let's go over to the West. The West front court. That's what I want to say.
Yep, I had Kawhi, Anthony Davis, and man, it was really tough to pick a 6 forward. There's just a whole lot of guys who are just okay, there isn't a clear 6 guy who's on the level of those top 5. And like I really debated here a lot. I would say it came down to me between Paul George was one of them, and Sabonis was another guy that I considered for sure. But I still think like he's a center who really struggles to protect the rim or provide much of a backline defensively, and I just have a big problem with that. So because he's kind of.
Sorry, did you say Sabonis?
Yeah, Sabonis.
Okay.
Lauri Markkanen, but like he doesn't really make plays for others ever. Brandon Ingram.
He's the finisher.
Brandon Ingram, I'm just morally opposed to putting Brandon Ingram on the All-Star team.
He's having a really good year.
Yeah.
Like he was like he got strong consideration for me. Did not make the team. I think there's a very good case for Brandon Ingram.
Yeah, I considered Zion. I don't know. Zion is just kind of not playing up to the standard that we all kind of expected from Zion as of a couple of years ago. Yeah. And then the final 2 were Şengün and Kat. Out of that group, I don't really see anyone who's head and shoulders standing out above the rest. And so I went with Kat.
Went with Kat of all that group, yeah. This is
it's a team success thing for me. It's like I just think Kat has just integrated much better into the defensive system. he's recovered this season. He's much better. He's kind of figured things out with Rudy Gobert. I feel like the two of them have developed some chemistry. So I don't know. I just feel like out of a bunch of like kind of okay-ish options, I wanted to go with the kind of team success guy.
Yeah, I think I'm higher on all these okay-ish options than you are. I consider them all a little bit more than okay. But I think
Well, I just
had,
mean relative to the top five guys in the front
yeah.
court.
Um, the I had this thought with Cat because obviously he's a much maligned player. Most of that has been because of defense, but also because of like some of his decision making on offense has been like very deservedly scrutinized kind of thing.
Yeah.
But overall, people generally accept that Cat is someone who helps your team's offense be really good, and he's a very offensively talented player. So what if it was just kind of a fact that he's good at defense this year?
Yeah, I know, and that's kind of what
Like,
that was like the turning point for me.
But I'm still just having kind of cognitive dissonance, just like, wait, so how good is this guy? Like I'm so used to like downgrading him off the edge of the cliff because of his defense. Like, what if that's not actually? And I think he is better than neutral at defense. I think like I watched the Timberwolves most of their games, and I'm like, Cat just had another great defensive possession, and he really does not have his signature awful possessions anymore. He just has solid, large body that knows, like, with a lot of like discipline. That all being said, I'm just confused about Towns. I went with Sabonis. I still think, despite De'Aaron Fox's offensive fireworks, Sabonis is still like. So, I mean, Fox is flat out a better player, having a better season. But and a lot of that, like a lot of the confirmation that we kind of got for that was in the playoffs last year, where Fox was able to keep being a hero and Sabonis was mitigated. But I also sometimes think we read that wrong. And I thought about this with Sabonis and Fox last year in the playoffs, and I also thought about it with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant in their series against Denver. It's like we watched Golden State do everything to make sure that Domantas Sabonis had a bad series.
Yeah, that is true.
It worked, and the Sacramento Kings offense.
Sabonis was also hurt in the late part of the season, and including that that first round series against the Warriors.
When I watch a defense sell out to ruin one offensive player's life and live with the contributions of the other player, it does give me pause, because I felt that, like, I watched Denver just throw the kitchen sink and not let Durant move, while kind of live with Devin Booker going into these like short drives and a pull-ups. They're just like, we will let Phoenix have that, we will live with that, and they won the series. And I'm just like, I know that Kevin Durant is a more damaging player to a defense. You can't let Durant get his. You really have to turn off his easy offense.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the same. Like, if Sabonis is allowed to run dribble handoffs and light the world on fire with all these 3-point shooters like orbiting around him, then the Kings are going to put up 130 points on you. Where De'Aaron Fox is going to get his. He's amazing. He's so fast. He's such a great tough shot hitter. But at the end of the day, you end up living with those shots and you win that playoff series. So while I'm fine with conceding that De'Aaron Fox is having a better season than Domantas Sabonis, and that he's the best player of the Kings, and I'm putting him on the All-Star team, I'm kind of like, we are like, he's averaging 20 points, 13 rebounds, 8 assists. He's shooting 60% from the field. He's hitting his open threes.
Yeah, he's a really good playmaker for a big man.
Yeah, and I think that without, like, I think he's what makes the Kings go more than anything. Now, that all being said, he is my pick. I looked really hard at Towns, Rudy Gobert, who's the runaway defensive player of the year right now, leading the best defense in the NBA and looking amazing. I thought really hard about Chet Holmgren. I like, it might not, like, maybe like his points and rebounds don't blow you off the table, but he's also a defensive player of the year candidate, like, making monstrous contributions to a team that, like, while Minnesota's the best team in the West right now, like, OKC's coming for it, and they're actually, like, despite the record, like, they look like the better team. I expect them to be the number one seed in the West. Like, give it a couple more weeks, and the Timberwolves are in the midst of a brutal schedule. So he's the second best player on the. I had Jalen Williams on my long list as well. I don't think he's quite got the numbers to justify that, but Chet's defense puts him up there. And then finally, I also thought about Şengün and Paul George in this tier.
Yeah.
Şengün is having a monster offensive season as well, and his defense has gone from bad to like not bad. He moves his feet. He does things well.
And the conventional wisdom pick has got to be Paul George, right? You know, he's a guy with a pedigree, having an all-star-ish level season.
Yeah, like I think this is really tough. I'm having a hard time making up my mind. Paul George. There's nothing really bad to say about Paul George's offense or defense this year. If you want to pick the pedigree player, maybe he's
Lowry as well, just like a hyper efficient scorer, play finisher that rebounds and defends the perimeter. Okay.
Yeah. So we're basically we've organically moved into our wild cards here.
Yeah.
So with this, I haven't picked this. If there's a front court player that's going to get it, I haven't picked them yet. I have Sabonis as a reserve.
Okay.
So I want to bring in. We've already talked about Booker. He's in my nebulous cloud of players to grab this one spot. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players for one spot.
Okay.
Ingram is not in this. I don't have Ingram in this group. I don't have Zion in this group.
Okay.
I don't have Markkanen. I don't have Wembanyama or Jaren Jackson Jr. or Desmond Bane. That's kind of my next tier of players. I do have Devin Booker, and I do have Jamal Murray in this category of players. And that is not necessarily because I think he's
missed
outplayed.
A lot of games. Unless you're just not penalizing guys for that.
I mean, he's played 4 less games than Devin Booker.
Yeah, I'm aware he's not the only guy who's missed games.
Yeah, I just like he's having a good season. He's averaging 20 points and 6 assists. He's shooting he's got elite efficiency. He's shooting 47% from the field, 41% from 3. He's doing damage. He's doing close enough to an impression of his playoff self where I'm just at the point with tiebreakers here where I'm like I want Jamal Murray to be an all-star so bad. Not because he's Canadian, by the way. I don't really care about that when it comes to all-star picks, but because I just know I just think he should be rewarded. I think it's ridiculous for him to remain not an all-star just because of some random blips of kind of bad luck, and that he's I'd rather see the guy. I used to vote for Manu Ginobili for the All-Star game every year just because I know he doesn't have better stats than these guys right now, but I know he's going to be murdering them in a playoff series. So he's in this group of 7 players or whatever that I'm choosing for one spot.
Yeah.
And I have him ahead of Booker.
Okay. I mean,
if it's a guard.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Team success wise, I just think, Jamal Murray, he's not going to have the same raw numbers as Booker. I mean, he's not really that far behind, honestly. He's kind of in this huge group of guys who are roughly averaging 25-ish and 5-ish, right? There's so many guys who are in that category. But yeah, the Nuggets are they're dynamite when him and Jokic are on the floor. My favorite 2-man pairing to watch in the NBA. They just have such incredible chemistry. I love the reverse pick and rolls that they do. Those are so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quietly also his best season. Not necessarily maybe it doesn't stand out by counting stats, but when you get into on a possession by possession, this is his best scoring rate ever and his best assist rate ever.
Yeah.
And his most efficient season? Not actually quite. It's one of his most efficient seasons ever.
I just feel he's been more consistent. We had this thing with Jamal Murray for years where it's okay, he kind of sucks for the first 3 quarters, then he turns it on late in the game and starts playing well, but you really wish he would just play well consistently throughout the game. And I feel I don't know if it was the playoff experience last year, he just feels more settled and under control throughout the game now.
He's also more firmly their point guard, I feel, than he's ever been. For years it was kind of they didn't really play a style that as a point guard, but now with how many pick and rolls they run with Jamal Murray, he looks a lot more like one. On off numbers, like him the best out of this group of guards. I think there's just a really strong. I think regardless of that he's played 24 games, I think there's. I just think he's got a case. I just think it's like I'm not going to be. I would be happy, not mad, if Jamal Murray
Yeah.
beat out some guys for this spot.
Well, I mean, you mentioned 7 guys in competition for this last spot, but like in reality, you could bring up like 15 guys. There's so many.
I mean, yeah, on my longer list, I thought about Harden. I thought about Fred VanVleet. I looked at CJ McCollum has sneakily bounced back. I thought about Aaron. I thought about some other Nuggets guys. I even went down all the way to like, how's Jeremy Grant doing in Portland? But
no, I mean,
no.
Jeremy Grant is going to be a Philadelphia 76er, and we're going to have a couple of nice, juicy 2028 draft picks or something.
So you think Daryl Morey is going to punt on?
No, I don't know. I just think it makes it. I don't really know why we're hanging on to Jeremy Grant long term, but
yeah. He'll definitely someone to watch during the trade deadline, but not so much at the All-Star deadline.
Yeah.
Do we like? I don't know who else. Like, we've made cases for everyone. Do you have like? Let's try to. Because what do you have 2 wild card spots open right now, or do you have 1? I got 1.
No, it's Stephen Booker.
Oh, you put Booker in. All right, I'm gonna go with. I got 1 spot to give up. I can really see a case for any of these bigs or Paul George. It's not going to be Booker for me because I want some spice on this podcast. George is the most boring decision.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to put Chet Holmgren in my last wild card spot.
Okay.
I just think
it's like you're building like an Olympic team where they have the token rookie that comes along.
I just think like how his offensive flexibility is immeasurable.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's on the list of like defensive player of the year candidates.
Yeah.
There's just no denying the impact that he's bringing there and how easy he makes everything. I'm like pretty floored by Chet Holmgren.
He's already maybe OKC's second best player, which is insane.
I think he definitely is, and I'm like as big a Jalen Williams fan as you can almost possibly be. But I just like Chet's the rim protection and the shooting and the decision making is just like it's astounding. I think he's a more complete player.
This is why it drove us Gonzaga fans completely insane that our awful garbage backcourt like threw away this incredible chance that we had at our first title with Chet Holmgren.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what college guards do, though, right?
Yeah,
They
it's awful.
College guard's got a college guard. Ready to head back to the East because we just steamrolled through the rest of our West there. So
yeah,
we are now in a. It's a little bit less. I've got a longer list in the East, but only because I think once you get out of the top, it gets a little bit murkier here. Who are your East backup guards?
Hold on here. I have 78 tabs open. I'm just trying to find the right one.
Yeah. Well, I'll do my. I've got Brunson.
Yep. No, so I had Brunson, but like I'm trying to think here because now we're saying probably an injury replacement here. So I'm trying to add an additional guard. But yes, I'm just based purely on picks, ignoring injuries. Tyrese and Mitchell were first team, and then I was going to have Brunson and Maxey.
I also have Brunson and Maxey. And you know what? I gave Maxey and Brunson a long thought as the starter. I think Maxey has been incredible in Philadelphia's offense this year. I think the defense is as bad as ever. He's just like he's actually like he does some solid defensive playmaking. He's got some good anticipation skills. He's got long arms. He's able to be a little bit disruptive, but he's also just like a small guard who gets out of position a lot of the time. His off-ball defense is worse than his on-ball defense. It's still a negative overall, which ended up giving Mitchell the kind of edge there. And Brunson's a lot stronger than Maxey on defense, so I think at least like you're not going to like post him up as easily all day as you can do with Maxey. But Maxey just doesn't like in that dribble handoff offense. He's just like I think you can take away what Maxey does with a ton of focus because he does need a runway. And if you take away that runway from him and you have defenders who aren't going to get blown by too easily, I think you can deal with Maxey a little bit more easily than you can deal with the resiliency of Jalen Brunson's strength and that mid-range pull-up game. But oh my God, like 6.6 assists and 1.5 turnovers. Like, this guy does not make mistakes. Like, he doesn't miss. He's cooled off since the beginning of the season, but he's still an incredibly efficient, dangerous shooter.
Yeah.
Watching him just get to attack with advantage and rip out defenses' throats over and over and over again has been a special joy to watch. I really like his game and think he definitely deserves a spot in this team. I had him until a recent kind of drop in production and Embiid missing some games. I had Maxey as my starter for like when I opened up this document to like get ready for this podcast, Maxey was still on there in bold. And I, had to revisit things and reconsider things. But Maxey's firmly in the reserve tier for me, as he seems to be for you.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, with the shots that he was taking and what he was shooting, like 43% from three for like the first month of the season, it was just insane. And yeah, he has cooled off a little bit since then. But like, I would say still clearly like, having a better offensive season than Dame, who was kind of the other guy I was somewhat considering. And I think he's just a little bit better defensively than Dame as well. So.
Yeah, despite what some Philly fans told us, Maxey did not continue to shoot 44% from three for the entire season. But let's go right over onto the front court if we're lockstep on those guards.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see. Well, do you want me to go first? It'll be probably a little bit more exciting because I'm just like so unsure on these picks.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, the front court in the East is just really interesting. There's so many names of guys that like these are not bad players, but all of them are flawed to some extent. Man, I really, really had to fight to, decide who I was going to pick and not have Julius Randle as a front court reserve on my team.
I'm going to quickly fire off some names of front court players.
Yeah. I mean, I'm seeing them, but go ahead.
Kristaps Porzingis, Julius Randle.
Yep.
Pascal Siakam.
Yep.
Paolo Banchero is quietly like upped his shooting numbers recently, and
they're still bad.
Not like the thing is, I had Franz much closer to the list, but Paolo's shooting numbers are now better than Franz's. But Franz Wagner's still my list. Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Kyle Kuzma, Tobias Harris, DeMar DeRozan, Miles Turner, Brooke Lopez, Jarrett Allen recently, Nicholas Claxton recently, and a quick shout out to Jalen Duren, who is definitely going to come nowhere near this because Detroit is so bad. But he has, if Detroit was good and he was playing like that, he'd be more seriously in consideration. But none of these guys made this team. I was probably the closest on Porzingis and had to give Randle a heavy look because of those numbers.
A look, or is Randle on your team?
Randle's definitely not my team. Porzingis is not on my team, but like I just think.
Wait, Randle is or isn't?
Randle is not.
Okay.
Every player I've listed so far did not make my team and did not even. I have to make one last decision on this team that we're going to be doing.
So your team is Jaylen Brown, Jimmy Butler, and Pascal Siakam?
Nope. Pascal Siakam I also listed. You're missing one obvious front court guy.
Bam?
Yeah.
Okay. I think
Bam.
Did you say Siakam? I must have missed that name.
Yeah, I said Siakam.
Okay.
Siakam was right after. I mean, who am I kidding? I'm putting Siakam above Randle. I don't believe in Randle at all.
Okay, so you have Bam, Jaylen Brown, Jimmy Butler.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're 2 out of 3. I have.
Who's your... Oh, I know who it is.
Who?
Scotty Barnes.
No.
What?
I had Kristaps.
Okay, I think so. You gave the Celtics 3 players.
Yep, Butler, Kristaps, and Jaylen Brown.
And I'm assuming that your wild card's not going to have Derek White as well. And you don't want to give him 4
No. Derek White's usage rate is too low. It's not an all-star qualifying usage rate. I know that's petty, but
no, I mean I think that's closer to how most people make their decisions. I'm always trying to find ways to get defensive guys on all-star teams, but Derek White didn't quite make my list either, though.
Yeah, and the Celtics are just ridiculous when KP is on the floor. They're like the historically greatest team in any sport ever. So like, and their offense is still good, but it's not like world destroying when KP is not on the floor. So, I think they've used him defensively really effectively for the most part. It is interesting. KP does present like I mean, A, he gives them rim protection, which they don't have with him off the floor. So I think he's very important to have on the floor. But it is interesting. KP provides like the one maybe area of weakness that might be a little bit exploitable in the playoffs, just because they love to put him on non-shooters, so that he's closer to the basket because he has a hard time closing all the way out from near the paint to the perimeter. So if you can get five guys on the floor that can shoot, I mean, that's not going to be relevant in every matchup, but anyway, that's a long way of saying like KP isn't a perfect fit, but I mean he just amplifies the Celtics offense to such an extent. Yeah,
He's like a stiffer Chet Holmgren. Like a lot of the things that I said about Chet are true about Porzingis, but he's not quite as mobile and not quite as like, and doesn't have the sort of like ambient playmaking. He doesn't make decisions quite at the level that Chet does, but he does bring like, you know, he's this kind of monster 3-and-D center with a little bit of rim pressure, which their offense like desperately needs. So I agree that he's like really important to the Celtics.
Yeah,
he's on my short list.
And KP is just like an offensive efficiency monster, and Bam isn't. But like Bam's a better a more versatile defensive player. So I totally I'm not like upset with those. You know.
Oh wait, do you not have Bam on your list?
No.
You put Kristaps Porzingis over Bam Adebayo. Yes. I didn't realize that. I was being cooperative.
Well, what am I supposed to do? The Celtics are like the number one in the East with a bullet, and Miami's middle of the pack.
So why stop at Porzingis? Why not get White and Drew and get Sam Hauser on?
Come on, team success like dictated half your decisions in the West. I can't do this in the East.
Miami is not having a bad season.
They're not, but they're not the Celtics.
They are 7 games behind the Celtics with vastly inferior talent. Bam Adebayo is averaging 22 and 10 with 4 assists.
Yeah.
And getting to the line at like, you know, at a very high rate. He's arguably the best defensive player in the NBA when push comes to shove.
Yeah.
I think like I've got Bam closer to like a dark horse MVP candidate than I have him being like, you know, like not. I thought he was the easiest front court reserve to name. I was like, well, Bam's in. Let's look at how many games Jimmy Butler's missed. Let's look at Jaylen Brown's kind of like non-scoring stats or non-scoring impact. Let's look at the other ball. I definitely like gave Porzingis a big long look, and I bumped Derek White up to like above guys like LaMelo and whoever, Deontay and some other, I don't know. I put Derek White at the same level as Dame, to be honest. But yeah, I think for me, Bam's a lock. I don't see Jimmy over Bam. That's wild. Like, what's the take there?
I just think Jimmy's more important for the Heat's offense, especially in the half court setting.
I disagree, actually. Like, I think like Jimmy Butler is given, like, I think push comes to shove in the playoffs, they need Jimmy to step up and be a monster. But when I watch them play, they kind of keep Jimmy as like this little offensive wild card. They run a ton of stuff through like Tyler Hero. I think their offense revolves around Bam in the middle of the floor, pressuring the rim and playmaking. Like, in terms of structurally, I'm not saying that makes Bam in a vacuum better than, obviously Jimmy Butler is a more talented offensive player. I'm not saying that at all.
I guess I've always had a bit of I think we had the same argument last year where I had Butler over Bam and you had Bam over Butler in the All-Star team. I think this is literally just a mirror of last year. I think it's always been a little annoying to me how Bam gets his shots. It just doesn't feel like really in the flow of the offense. Whereas Butler just feels a little bit more dynamic with the ball in his hands. Like with Bam, there's a lot of little flip shots and, you know, stuff in the paint where he's just kind of holding the ball and then just seems to cast something up without really waiting for the possession to develop.
I don't think that Bam is a good scorer, like, just in general. Like, I'm not.
Yeah. And here's the argument I'll present. I'll flip this back on you. Mm-hmm. I felt like in the finals last year, with the way that the Nuggets defended the Heat, it was very similar to what you're talking about with the Suns series, where they really let Bam take all the shots he wants and tried to cut the water off when it came to Jimmy. So I feel other teams view Butler as much less of Bam as much less of an offensive threat.
I'm not. I have no pushback on that because Jimmy Butler is a better offensive player than Bam. I think the way that they run their offense, Bam is more integral. The Jimmy lives kind of off scrap. I think it's more like if there's any debate on the over who's contributing more on offense, um, like just flip it to the other side of the ball where Bam is a defensive player of the year candidate and Jimmy's really good. Just like I just think the gap is bigger on that end. On off numbers like Jimmy more than Bam. Um, so there's like there's not like a clean and obvious like statistical case to make in Bam's favor. But I see like I feel like they build the team kind of around what like Bam's overall versatility, and then they kind of fill in gaps around that just structurally. They put one guy in the middle, they run shooters around, but on the perimeter it's kind of like if it's Duncan Robinson's night, Jimmy's like, cool, I'm chilling in the corner.
My one other gripe, and maybe this is just a personal thing, but Miami once again is just abysmal at protecting the rim.
Yeah.
And I think like Bam is super versatile defensively. He's out on the perimeter guarding forwards like half the time, right? So like I get that he provides a lot of value, but the one thing that he does not do is deter shots at the basket. I feel like that always like takes away a little bit from me for like someone who's playing the 5-man.
I think the rim protection numbers have nothing to do with Bam not being a good rim protector. I think if you look into a lot of like,
well, he's not asked to defend the rim a lot because like what he really excels at is like switching and being super versatile.
His like rim protection numbers in terms of like field goal differentials and sort of like how other teams score against him in certain play actions, like if he's guarding the roll man or if he's switched on the ball handler, like no one scores on Bam in those situations. Like he's just a monster in basically every kind of defensive play type. However, they make no like they're one of the only teams in the league that just like we will never play big. We don't like well, I mean that's they play Kevin Love is like a Kevin Love Bam is as big as this team can,
which is not very big,
or a Nikola Jovic Bam, right? So we're actually talking about if he plays with another big, he plays with a big who's a defensive liability, and it's actually more work for him than it is if he's playing with a Caleb Martin or a Haywood Highsmith or a Jaime Jaquez.
So well, the interesting thing with Bam is like just body type wise. He's super strong, right? And he has like massive shoulders, but he's not very tall, and he's not like some massive vertical athlete. So like there's a few other centers in the NBA who are like 6'8", right? Like Dwight Howard was famously not super tall for the position that he played, or like Rob Williams, I think is body type wise maybe a decent comparison, but a lot of those guys were like huge vertical leapers, and Bam is not. So, I mean,
they're a pretty impressive athlete.
Yeah, but not at the level of like a Rob Williams. He doesn't like have that insane weak side rim protection explosiveness where he just like jumps halfway across the court, or like a Giannis, for example. I just think like they're really playing like a traditional power forward at the 5.
Yeah, he's like a little under 6'9" without shoes on. And it's not like he has a 7'6" wingspan. He's got like almost 7'3" wingspan. So, yeah, and you know what? Like that has showed up. Like Anthony Davis like handled him in the finals. Nikola Jokic was too big, but like that's to me. But then I watched him play like Alpi Şengün the other night. I watched Heat Rockets, and I was like, oh, against the biggest, most powerful players in the NBA, Bam is human. But watching like Şengün is a strong boy with really quick shuffly feet, and like Şengün couldn't. He was reduced to attacking gaps the whole night. Like he just couldn't get anything against Bam. And it's like even like sometimes when they were like boxing each other out for rebounds, like Alpi Şengün is used to just like putting his butt on someone and clearing out the paint. He bounced off.
Well, Bam's like really strong and has an incredible center of gravity, so I think that's part of it. So like, and Şengün is big, but he's not like a mule like Jokic, right? So he's not quite at that level.
I know that Bam, like, there's a certain, I didn't like consider Bam for a starting spot. I know there's a level where Bam does top out or where he doesn't have the same advantages, but like, I think this is just more about like the Heat ask him to do everything. Yeah. And he's like, of course he falls off short in some of those areas. Like he's one of the most relied on players for like in the league for a team that has gone to 2 finals in the past 5 years. And I feel like he gets very little credit for that because Jimmy Butler plays a very heroic style of basketball. I had Jimmy and Bam both in my reserves, by the way. So this wasn't a Jimmy versus Bam question for me.
Yeah, and I have Bam as a wild. I have a Bam as a wild card, so like he's still on the team, and
okay,
if we want to swap him for Jaylen Brown and make Jaylen Brown a wild card, I think that's acceptable.
I think Jaylen Brown is like, because he's almost the opposite of Bam. He's just like he's like this like powerful downhill on ball scorer with good enough shooting range, that just like is pretty boring in every other way.
Can you hear that earthquake happening in the background?
You're having an earthquake?
No, we live right next to a train track.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me that like it was like Celtics fans coming for my head if I'm about to say something bad about
the house does shake slightly when a train goes by. So.
The house does shake slightly when Jaylen Brown slander begins on this podcast. I thought like I couldn't really find a way to get Jaylen Brown off this team. I just think he's like he's on the best team, and he's like very clearly their second option on offense, and he's also like, despite not being he's like always been like the 5th best defender on the Celtics, but that doesn't mean he's not a really good defender. Like he's one of the sturdier men.
Yeah, he's just not a versatile defender on a team full of a bunch of super versatile defenders. And if everyone else can guard 3 positions, you don't need to be Mr. Versatile, I guess. So
and I just don't think he doesn't chip in that much as a help defender. Like he always kind of looks like small at times when he's trying to crowd the paint or like disrupt in certain ways. But I can picture a different world where like picture if Jaylen Brown was the best player on, I don't know, like what if Jaylen Brown was on like Brooklyn or Indiana, and we'd just be talking about let's say Indiana. Like if on Indiana, he would be we would be talking about what an amazing defender he was, because like there's bad defenders around him. I think we sometimes lose track of how good he is defensively because of the environment he's in, where he's sort of like, well, he's not doing as much as like Derek White, who's a defensive genius, or Jrue Holiday, who's considered the best guard defender of the past 5 years, and a good rim protector, and Jason Tatum, who's wonderfully versatile, and Al Horford's still like a boss coming off the bench for them. But like I couldn't get him off the team, but I did pit a lot of players up against him, and we're just like, is this guy better than Jaylen Brown? Like, because a lot of players are a lot more versatile than he is. But I feel like they need to be on either a similarly competitive team or just be so clearly statistically better than him to take this spot from him. I think it's just kind of his. He deserves a reserve spot in the Eastern Conference All-Star team, and he's my only other Celtic. So I gave the Celtics 2.
Yeah.
3.
Oh, so you don't have KP as a wild card?
No.
Okay.
I got to pick a wild card.
And you don't have Derek White.
I don't have Derek White, but I got one wild card.
It's a shame. Okay. Wait, so you're going to give one wild card pick, and you're saving your one.
Yes, we're gonna debate over the last options.
Yeah, I don't know.
No wild
for
card
the last. No, I have one.
Oh, who's your one?
It was Bam, but due to the case that you made, I'm swapping it for I'm swapping him in KP, I guess. I'm swapping him in Jaylen Brown. I don't know. Jaylen Brown has better raw numbers than KP, but KP's advanced impact on the Celtics is head and shoulders above Jaylen Brown's. So I'll just say Jaylen Brown will be my wild card pick.
I might flip a little bit with you in a different way, where I take Jaylen Brown off the team to put Kristaps Porzingis on.
I think Kristaps Porzingis has more of an impact on the Celtics' success than Jaylen Brown does.
I think that you are correct, and I am moving my spreadsheet around.
Okay.
Kristaps Porzingis is now in the front court, and Jaylen Brown has been demoted into this wild card group.
Okay. So he's a potential wild card for you, but not set in stone.
Yeah. Yes. He's got to fight against 3 other players for my last wild card spot. Do you want my other wild card spot, or
I want to see Jaylen Brown and Scotty Barnes have this cage match that you're alluding to here.
But you know who's not in this cage match because they've made my team is Trae Young.
Okay. I mean, I can see it. Like, he's having a ridiculous season, so.
He's having a ridiculous season, and I'm just kind of like, I think you kind of have to make a decision of where you want to blame Atlanta's mediocrity on Trae Young,
Hmm.
or do you want to blame it on the rest of the team, basically?
Yeah.
And in the past, there's been a strong statistical signal that Trae Young is so damagingly bad at defense that you cannot like that, like if you want to blame everything on Trae Young, you can. But this year
Hmm.
he doesn't have that statistical signal, so I'm just like, I don't feel quite as confident about making that assertion. And I'm not a Trae Young hater, so I'm not going to. And I look at the rest of the team, and I've watched Atlanta maybe half a dozen times this season, and everyone's like Jalen Johnson would be in the discussion for me as a he like long list all-star discussion had he not gotten hurt. I think he's their second best player. Um, I think Deontay Murray is also on my long list, but really bad fit there. And then everyone else is just so underwhelming. Like DeAndre Hunter is fine, but not good. Clint Capella is another year more mediocre. It seems like he totally does his job. Everyone does their job, but no one does it at a high level. And there's just this one guy averaging 30 and 11. And his 3-point shooting numbers have trended back upwards. He started the season ice cold again, but he's been on fire for like a month now. And I'm just like, I've left Trae Young off the All-Star team before and felt fine about it. I'm not doing this year. Trae Young
Yeah.
deserves to be on the All-Star team, squeaked in with a wild card, one little step ahead of the next four guys that are going to compete for that.
Can
Trae
I?
Young is in.
I like your case. I do see the numbers are really good. I don't think the defensive problems can be squarely blamed on him. There's all sorts of problems all throughout the roster, including
Yeah.
Clinton Capella. Just whether it's age, whether it's he's had just kind of a long laundry list of minor injuries, not a ton of major
Yeah.
injuries, but he's just fallen off slightly. I'm gonna squeak him in, but not as a wild card. I am banking on there being at least one injury replacement because
Okay.
I have one wild card I want to add. So
Okay. Who's your wild card?
Trae Young is filling in for Maxey, who's going to be bumped up to the starting lineup, or who else? No, Brunson is going to be in the starting lineup, and Trae Young is going to fill in for him.
Okay. All right. I'm glad you've planned it all out.
This is totally in the moment. I want to put Scotty Barnes on in that last spot.
Okay. You can start with the Scotty Barnes case.
Scotty
He's
Barnes.
he's in my group of four. So.
Scotty Barnes can shoot threes. Scotty Barnes
Yeah.
can defend your best player 1 through 4, at a pretty high level. Scotty Barnes, I'm totally comfortable with him handling the ball basically all the time, making plays for others, making the right decision. Scotty Barnes is really good around the rim. Just give him the ball within the paint and against any sort of matchup where he is not at a massive physical disadvantage, and I'm confident he'll get a good shot or find the open man if they send a double. I just don't see a lot of weaknesses in Scotty Barnes' game, right? Like the weakness last year was he couldn't shoot, and he wasn't totally awesome off ball when Siakam and Van Vliet had the ball in their hands, and I feel like he's improved at all the things that we criticized of him last year. So how do I not reward that?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I did not see the well, he came into the league with a really broken looking jumper, but he's in his rookie season he shot the ball really confidently, so I felt really good about Scotty Barnes, and just I don't know what kind of shooter he's gonna be, but he's not gonna let that interfere.
He 100% reworked his form, and I haven't gone into the weeds on how exactly he's done this, but his shot just looks. I mean, he's got a lot more arc on it this year than he had in the past.
Yeah, so much arc. Yeah.
The shot just looks different. It looks like it's more comfortable for him to get it off. He doesn't need a ton of space anymore.
Yeah, he tries it way quicker.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just think he had a couple major weaknesses, and he just improved upon those so much over the offseason.
Yeah. So I mean, I can't. So cage match time. I can't really make an individual case for Jaylen Brown over.
I'm pretty confident Scotty Barnes would win over Trae Young.
No, sorry, no. Jaylen Brown cage match with Scotty Barnes.
That's more of a matchup.
A couple more things about Scotty Barnes. One thing besides the shooting just being I mean, he's shooting 38% from three on like a really solid number of attempts. I did not see that coming because his shooting really regressed last year, and he did not look confident shooting the ball. It was a bad thing whenever he shot the ball. This year, it's like I see him taking step backs. He loves to shoot it. It's like a good thing. But also when he gets in the paint, the way in which he's scoring, like that you're describing here, is that like he's just got such long arms, and he keeps his release point so high that he's not like, you think you're contesting Scotty Barnes on some of these paint shots, but you're not really. Like he's just above you, getting a little flick up.
You know who he reminds me of? This is a really weird comparison, but he reminds me a little bit of Jokic when he's operating in the paint.
Yeah.
Like Jokic sometimes just goes full bully ball mode, right? But when Jokic is in his bag in the paint and is like looking to get just like a little bit of room so he can just kind of flip the ball out of his hands and in, like Scotty Barnes has kind of like similar spots and similar ways in which he kind of attempts to get those shots off, I feel like.
So obviously a big, like, poor man's version of almost every aspect of Jokic's game, but I definitely see what you mean in terms of like strength off the pivot foot. Like he's really versatile off the pivot foot. He doesn't lose his vision. He sees passing angles, and when nothing materializes, he's got that nice flip shot down. Yeah. But I'd say the one advantage he has over Jokic in that area is that Scotty Barnes can jump.
That's true.
So like that flip, he's not 7 feet tall.
Jokic doesn't need to jump. He just like pushes you out of the way a little bit and then reaches his hands over your head and grabs the offensive rebound.
But like you can test the crap out of Jokic's shot and he still just sort of gets it off. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Scotty doesn't quite have that. He's like, he's a forward sized player, but it's deceptive because like he's got this massive wingspan and he's got crazy hops off 2 feet. So it just sort of like all of a sudden he just kind of just transforms for 1 second into like a 7'3" guy and throws up a little flip shot, and it's just like that's really hard to guard. Advanced numbers don't love him this year. He's got kind of a little bit of the Pascal Siakam curse where he's like killing it, but there's like he has not he's had these incredible moments of rim protection this year for the Raptors, and he's averaging 1.4 blocks and 1.4 steals, and I see him do some incredible defensive playmaking, but the Raptors do not defend the rim very well when he's on the floor, and I feel like it's going to be a little bit more scrutinized now that OG's not there, because the Raptors were a good defense with OG on the floor, but the whole season it was like Scotty Barnes is looking great defensively, and even early on some defensive metrics really liked him as a catch-all thing. Those have sort of faded. I don't know, he's a sort of hard play, like the numbers don't all like him. I really like him when I see him play, and I always going to go off that first sort of thing unless I get an explanation for why the numbers are saying like they're like 9 points worse with Scotty on the floor, but they're also a bad team overall. He plays point guard for them a lot. He'll do it probably less with Quickly, but like he's basically their starting shooting guard that can morph into their like offensive post hub. So but the Raptors suck. They're a bad team.
They do, but I mean, team record thrown out, and also you moved Kristaps Porzingis onto your team, so you already have your 2 Celtics quota met. Yeah. I mean, in a vacuum, Scotty Barnes is a better player than Jaylen Brown.
I agree. There's one more player that I haven't discussed that I'm really surprised that you haven't integrated into this discussion a little bit more.
I consider Dame.
And he's not on your team at all.
No.
Dame is not on my team either.
I appreciate Damian Lillard a lot. He is really bad on defense. And he was kind of the offensive force making the Blazers go. I mean, we had so many seasons where... I mean, I feel like a lot of it was just like a gravity thing. Because we had so many seasons where we had 2 or 3 players in our lineup who were not good at offense, and the Blazers were still like a top 5 offense in the NBA. Like it was kind of ridiculous. Dame is not currently having that level of impact. So like with the Bucks, Giannis is their best offensive player, not Dame. Dame tends to be the one making decisions late in games. He had a bunch of like game-winning or game-clinching shots early in the season that has tailed off a little bit towards this midpoint in the season. But yeah, I mean, I think if he's not having that ridiculous offensive impact, the defensive weaknesses remain, the kind of playmaking weaknesses remain. I don't know. I mean, he kind of has some similar weaknesses to Trae Young, and Trae Young's playing better, so.
Yeah, I think that if Dame was even just a touch more efficient, if Dame was playing anything nearing his like the efficiency he's had in the past couple of years, I think you could keep him off the team regardless of like the Bucks defense crumbling due to his presence alone almost. But I just don't like how you're going to get him over any of these other guards like with those numbers. You have to be like with the Bucks or the 2 seed. Bucks are lucky to be the 2 seed because like they're not really playing like one. Like, they've got a over by simple rating system they're the fourth best team in the East, like just a touch above the Pacers kind of thing. So like the Sixers and Celtics have looked a lot better than them regardless of record. And Dame has had amazing moments, but he also had brutal moments as well that have caused legitimate panic amongst the Bucks fan base. He's 34 years old. I just think he'd have to be playing a little bit better than this for him to be a lot of us expected him to be a lock, and I just don't think, like between the names we've already mentioned, I don't really see a case for Dame. I had him right there with Derek White, who's obviously the opposite kind of
Dame
player.
is a spry young 33.
Yeah, he will turn. He's 34 soon, though, right?
Yeah.
This is his age 34 season.
He turns 34 in the summer. But I'm only bringing that up because there has been so much consternation over Damian Lillard's age when we've seen, I mean, yes, in the early 2000s, a 33-year-old guard would be concerning, but like we've seen so many stories recently, like Chris Paul, Kyle Lowry, Mike Conley, who have been able to maintain really high level play into their late 30s. And
but not really, really high level play.
Chris Paul was still really good up until like age 35, 36.
But Chris Paul is like his scoring impact disappeared pretty quickly, right? By the time he got by the time he was like he limped out of Houston, he had this big comeback where he kind of reworked his body, but he came back and his value was more about like he was a clutch mid-range shooter, really good floor general, and kept up with pretty strong defensive impact with him. And even someone like Kyle Lowry was more a role player in his old age, but a lot of that impact came from his versatility, his like scrappiness sort of thing, like because his scoring versatility disappeared after like the championship season. He was able, like both those guys are so strong and versatile and were able to fill different roles where we like already know like Dame's only shining beacon is Steph Curry, who's the same age as him.
Steph Curry's older, I think, a year or two older.
Steph Curry's 35 and almost 36 actually, so that's actually a sizable gap. So Steph Curry is the hope, but he's already not looking. This season has not been a great trend for that. I just worry if he turns into a normal good offensive guard, massive defensive liability in his mid-30s.
I guess the case I was trying to make is like Damian Lillard could experience age-related decline in his age 33 season, but it's not a guarantee. Whereas I feel like some people were saying, oh, Damian Lillard's 33 now, therefore he will be much worse. Where I'm like, that could happen, but
yeah, I still hold it as the most realistic scenario for just players to get a little bit worse in their things, but players defy that all the time, and no one's career is predictable besides the fact that they will be retired before they turn 45, and probably drop off at some point. We'll see about LeBron James, but
LeBron James he's dropped off. It's just been gradual,
So I went from having Jaylen Brown to we'll
recap,
list the full teams, but let's also talk about the biggest swings, because I went from Jaylen Brown being a locked-in reserve to now being off the team. I've got Porzingis and Barnes in. Barnes and Trey are the wild cards, and Porzingis made it all the way up to reserve. And then try to think of if I changed anything. Changed my mind in the West. I think I didn't change my mind on anyone, but Chet ended up surprise making my team of that group. What were your biggest changes?
Well, I'd swapped Ant and Fox for Booker and Steph, as reserve to wild card, basically.
Right.
So Ant and Fox are reserve, Booker and Steph are wild card, and then in the East, I swapped Jaylen Brown and Bam Adebayo, reserve to wild card. Yeah, because Bam is a better player than Jaylen Brown, even though I wanted to reward Celtics.
Yeah. So quickly reviewing our teams, we have the same lineup in the Eastern Conference. It is
Yep.
Tyrese Halliburton, Donovan Mitchell in the backcourt with Tatum, Giannis, and Embiid in the front court.
Yep.
Our backcourt, or are the remaining, like without going into which one was a wild card because we went into that. Our guards were both Brunson, Maxey, and Trey. Did we both? Yeah, we had the same.
I had Trey as I'm cheating 13th player injury
Oh
replacement.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, so I had Trey. You did not, but Trey is your first in line for an injury replacement, and my injury replacement is going to be Jaylen Brown.
Yep.
And then the front court, we both agreed on Jimmy, Bam, Porzingis, and Barnes by the end. We really came together and
Yep.
convinced each other like in several different ways. So our only difference on those teams is Trey and Jaylen Brown.
Yep.
Cool. All right, in the West, both had Shea Luka, both had Jokic, both had Durant. I went Kawhi and you went LeBron.
Yep, for the starters. And then I had Kawhi, Davis, and Cat in the reserves.
And I had LeBron, Davis, and Sabonis. Can't believe you put on Cat and I didn't. I guess I'm just like a self-hating Timberwolves fan.
Cat is like, he doesn't have a clear weakness.
No, it's a really good case.
Sabonis does. Even though Sabonis he's the second best big man playmaker in the NBA after Jokic, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. And then in the backcourt,
Ant and Fox.
I also had Ant and Fox. Our wild card guard is Curry.
Yep.
Both. And then I got Chet, where in the other wild card spot where you have
boring pick Booker.
Right? Yeah. I mean, all these guys deserve it. It's not like I'm not saying Booker is not an all-star. He definitely is. Booker's a monster, one of the best offensive players in the league. Is there any no one's injured either in the West right now, eh?
Not currently, yeah. We'll see what happens. The last few All-Star games, there's been like 5 injury replacements, so we'll get some more guys in here. But
yeah, but now with this now with the All-Star the All-NBA qualifier or like the awards qualifying minimum of 65 games, like
there's a couple guys. Well, we'll see. I mean, there's a couple guys who already missed 9 or 10 games, and we're not even technically halfway through the season, so.
Embiid is not going to be on any awards this year. I'm sorry. Like I know we just talked about him as
he's just going to miss too many games.
Yeah, he's getting close.
You don't think the Sixers are going to put him out there for the first minute and then pull him near the end of the year just to make him qualify?
Oh, if he was at 64 games, sure. And to be honest, I would want a team to do that because I would hate to see a player who was deserving that was at lose because of one game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'll take the whole season over one game if that's the matter. But if it's 62 games or 60 games, yeah, I'm not seeing it. And then so the other guys we're talking about there is Donovan Mitchell's already missed 10 games. Devin Booker is at 9 games. Larry Markkinen, but now we're starting to get a little bit murkier.
Bam has missed 9 games, hasn't he? He's already missed a handful.
I think you're right. Bam and Jimmy are still in the 20s. Anyone in the
once they had the 65 game requirement, I just said, okay, Jimmy's not winning any more awards.
Yeah.
Those days are over.
I'd be so like Durant and LeBron and Curry and Anthony Davis have yet to miss significant time.
Yep.
And that's someone's, and Kawhi hasn't missed a ton of time either yet.
While the health lasts, I think you just got to play when you're in that class of characters.
Yeah. Kyrie is almost already out.
Yeah.
Porzingis. But now we're starting to get out of all NBA territory, right? So Jamal Murray probably won't make an all NBA team. Unless he plays every other, I don't know. He's already missed quite a few. Mm-hmm. After that, the names are probably, anyways.
Yeah. Anyway,
let's wrap this podcast.
We'll worry about that later.
Yeah. Another podcast episode for another day. Hopefully it's not talking about players who've missed time with injury, but thanks so much for listening to everyone. Enjoy the NBA All-Star ramp-up process because it's not like the game's actually that fun to to watch anyways. But there
Yeah.
is some drama in that maybe this year the NBA All-Star Game won't suck. The point is, it's way more fun to pick them than it is to watch them.
We're going back to East versus West. So when it's broke, go back to what worked in the 1990s, I guess.
Oh, and bring back the white versus colored jerseys. That would be sick as well. Yeah. So, I mean, just remember that picking them is more important than watching them play. But most of all, please remember that ball is life.
We'll see you next time.